Welcome back to my STW-8 here. We are going to talk about extended techniques. And we're going to get into this non-entry button and this counter control button, which eluded me when I first got it. I realized what repeat did with a little bit of reading. I found out what these two guys here do, and the negative division kind of pretty self-explanatory once you know. And these guys up here, keyboard lock. There's nothing special about that. So, but these two buttons are very interesting. I'm going to talk mainly about this one because I'm actually not 100% sure when you would really use that counter reverse button pretty much, where it inverts the action of the counter. So if you were entering a positive number, it would actually subtract it from there. And if you enter a negative number, it would add to it instead when it's in this down position. But I'll show you the manual, which has an example, and we'll do the example. I have the manual here in a folder. I actually keep it tucked underneath the calculator, and there's a little strap so I can pull it out from underneath. So this manual is available online. Just search up Friden STW-10 or STW-8, and the whole manual has been scanned, and I printed it off and put it in a folder. The first thing I want to show is the non-entry key, and we're going to talk about grand totals. This was something I was interested in. I run my own business, and I find it fun sometimes to do some math and calculations with my vintage calculators. Yes, it takes longer. Yes, I have Excel, but Excel doesn't make these sounds. So I do prefer sometimes to use this to do a little bit of side math outside of the actual computer. So if you want to, let's say you want to run a grand total, you're adding up an invoice, and this is a calculator that you have. It's 1955, and you want to do it. You have to do it. No choice. So what you do is set up your decimal places the same way we talked about. 2 decimals here and 2 decimals there. The multiplier matches the counter, and the accumulator is a combination of whatever is in the keyboard, decimal-wise, plus the amount of decimal places in the counter, gives us the accumulator. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this like this. Ideally, set it for 3 decimal places to round up because we're talking money and you want to round up the last digit, but it doesn't really matter. It's just an example. Let's go ahead and set this up for grand totals. First thing we're going to do is click the non-entry lever down. That means that only division can enter things into the counter. Multiplication, addition, and subtraction are locked out from adding anything into that. Alright, I'm going to leave the add lever down so that it clears the keyboard each cycle. And I'm going to lock the lower display so it can't be accidentally cleared with a carriage clear, or by manually clearing the kind of all clear. Whereas when this is down, both clear at the same time. Now we've locked it. Now, let's type in our first number. Let's say we're selling something that is $2.50. So we'll do $2.50 in here. Okay, and somebody bought 20 of them. Okay, and I'll hit multiply. There we go. We got 50. And we want to add that to our subtotal here. Now, you're probably asking, how do we get it into the counter? It's in the accumulator. It's like 20 feet away from there, man. Well, actually, there's a really cool trick in the manual. You just divide it by 1. Do a positive division to add it, and a negative division to subtract it from the counter. Now I put our 50 in the counter. This is where our running total is going to be, not in the accumulator. We're using them as separate halves of the machine so that we can do calculations while saving a running total. So let's go ahead. We'll do another one. $3.60, and someone bought 35 of them. $126 there. And we'll divide it by 1 to enter it. And we've added it to our total there. So remember, when we do multiplication, the auto clear is enabled. So it's a good thing we lock that so it doesn't accidentally clear our bottom. Now, let's say they get a discount. 30% off. Well, we take our total here, 176, and we'll multiply it by 30%. In this case, 0.30. That's 0.30 there. Multiply. So they get $52.80 off. And now we want to subtract that from their grand total. So we just divide by 1 and do a negative division to subtract the quotient from the bottom there. And you see 123.20 is their total. But wait, we forgot to add tax. So we can type in 123.20. And my province tax here is 13%. So I'll type in 13. Oh, 16,016, so 1602. So we'll go ahead and do a positive division by 1. And you can see their grand total is 139.21 with tax. That's amazing that you can use different parts of it at the same time while holding a total. I thought that was fascinating. So that's a really good example of how to use the non-entry key. So let's go to the counter control key, and I'll pull out the manual and we'll look together at the example that they give. The example they give here is multiplication followed by a division by a constant. So they give us a problem here. They give us, we have some, looks like an invoice kind of thing, 37 pieces at $24 gross, and their gross, one gross is equal to 144. So what we'll do is I'll set this all up how they want here. They want the keyboard decimal places at 0 and 3, the multiplier with 2 decimal places, upper and lower dials, both with 5 decimal places, and they want the counter control lever down and the add lever down. So I'll go ahead and set that up, and then we'll do the problem. All right, I have the decimal markers all set up here. I've got the divide function decimal marker as well, because this is followed by a division after the multiplication. Control lever down, counter control, so that the function of the counter is inverted. 2 decimal places there, 5 for the top and bottom, and 3 and 0 as they want. They've typed in 144 into the right-hand side of the keyboard, and I have locked the first 3 rows here so that none of these 3 rows can be pressed and none of the first 3 rows can be cleared. On these calculators, row 1 is here, and it works out to the left because it's all justified to the right. Now they want us to set 37 right next to that. So go ahead and type 37. And I want 24 in the multiplier. It's 24.00 and hit multiply. Okay, now you see we did a positive multiplication, but because we've inverted the counter, it's actually subtracted the multiplier from the counter here. Now they want us to depress both divide keys. So we're dividing by a constant here, and that's this 144. Okay, we got 6.16666. And on their example here, I'll show you, they actually get 6.1666 and 6. So, very cool. Not quite sure the application. Not quite sure what the gross actually means. But I felt the need to show you that example as to where you would use the counter control key. It's not something I'll be using quite often. I find the non-entry key a lot more handy, especially doing grand totals and working with things like invoices and receipts is very handy. Thanks for watching this extended techniques video. I know the first example was a little bit more useful than the second one, but I felt the need to show that control, the counter control lever here, and an example they gave in the manual. And like I said, you can just Google STW-8 or STW-10 Friden user manual, and it will probably come up with the Curious Mark website, and you'll be able to download it from there. It's very handy to have with the calculator in case you ever need to look up any function, the keys, and what it does. So, thanks again for sticking around and watching an old school mechanical calculator from the 50s. I think this is a really overlooked and forgotten piece of technology. I think people take computers for granted these days when this was a computer in its day, and it's got over 5,000 parts inside to get this job done. So hats off to the engineers that designed this. Absolutely crazy the amount of work that went into designing this, and I'm glad I found it and was able to fix it, and instead of it ending up in the landfill, because this is just too good to throw away.